Don't you love that officiality? All right. Welcome to our webinar this month of I Hired Workers, but Human Beings Showed Up. Now what? For those of you who aren't familiar with us, as I mentioned earlier, we have changed to a new webinar platform, so bear with us in case we run into a couple of technical difficulties. We also should let you all know, of course, you know you're all muted, but we will welcome any comments or questions in the chat. And John will be manning that for us, so feel free to put your comments or questions in there. You can expect that this will last 30 or 40-ish minutes, and everyone who's been registered will be offered a recording soon. We don't know how long it's going to take for Zoom webinar to generate these recordings. We're assuming it's going to be pretty quickly, just like the recordings of their meetings, but we'll see as we go along. And then, the 30 to 40 minutes, a lot's going to depend on the questions and commentary that we have along the way, but we should be ready to get going. And let's see, anything else? Did I forget anything?
No, let's go.
Rock and roll. So the cat's out of the bag. A lot of times we hired people. In fact, with this low unemployment rate, we're dying to hire people. We just can't bring them on fast enough. And once they come on, we're like, oh, you're here. Great, get to work. Except that's not really how it works. And I think of it a lot like first-time parents when they give birth to this child and they go through all kinds of torment for the first 9 months. And I remember our kids, when they were giving birth to our grandkids, going through this and thinking, oh my God, those 9 months, I'm sure glad those are over. And we, chuckle and said, that was the easy part, right? It takes a lot of time, money, effort, resources to help make sure that child is a strong, independent contributor to society. Well, once you get a new hire on board, it takes a lot of time, money, effort, resources to make sure they're a strong, independent, or maybe leader of resources within your organization. So the spoiler alert is if you really hire the superstar, it's less about the superstar's performance and more about the leader to whom they report. So let's see what we have coming up here. And of course, since I was running the other thing, it doesn't realize I'm in there. All right. Leadership acceleration. There are two approaches. One is what we typically refer to or have heard referred to as leadership development. And that is all about developing the individual leader. It's making them better at creating and reading budgets. It's making them better at time management. It may be sending them to charm school, whatever. When we talk about leadership acceleration, we're talking about accelerating the performance of the direct reports, because we believe if you can do that, you're going to get far much more momentum and growth for the organization.
Yeah, the whole idea here is as you're looking at your ROI for your leadership investment, and as you're trying to understand how to best leverage those dollars, do you want your focus to be exclusively on those leaders and making them better? Or do you want the focus to be on the leaders' direct reports? And what we did is we put a little kind of an outline together here, a little bit indicating, if you got an average leader who's making $100,000 and you increase their productivity by going through some leadership development, you're likely to get a $10,000 ROI. But if you take that leader's direct reports, in this case, there's 5 direct reports that they're all have an average salary of $75,000. If you increase each of them by 10%, you've got a much greater ROI by focusing on the growth of the direct report, not just the leader. So the idea behind an effective leadership acceleration approach is to make the focus on the direct reports and their productivity increase.
Those of you who've known of us for a while already know this and probably could talk to this slide, but for those of you who don't, we are behavior experts at work. Everybody who works here at the Metis Group have been students of human behavior probably all of our lives. So it isn't just about being able to read an assessment graph or being able to plug and play different processes. We understand how humans work in the workplace and how we can align them to make sure we're accomplishing your business goals. We focus in processes in 3 particular areas. One is in selection. How do we make sure we get the right people in the right seats? You all know we are not a search firm, but how do we make sure we're clear about what we're looking for and then know how to spot it when we finally find it? And then if we've hired the superstars, how do we accelerate their performance and get superstar performance out of them? That's around leadership. And then, of course, how do we really make sure we have the culture we need and want to survive and thrive? And that's around organizational health or culture. Those of you who don't know, you may notice that John and I both share the same last name, and that's because we're married. One time we forgot to tell people that, and people were wondering, were we brother and sister, as we were demonstrating healthy debate in a session. But we are both business and marital partners. And, you know, there are a ton of leadership development and training programs out there. So why us? For everything we do that's behavior based, we are on the front lines too. We are business owners. We understand what it's like to deal with the economy, with challenges in the marketplace, with marketing challenges, with all kinds of things, including talent that face us. And we tried actually counting between both of us, all of our team members, and as long as we've actually been in business with the Metis Group, as well as previous lives when we worked for other people, we've been in so many different industries, worked with so many different types of organizations, and have encountered so many different jobs. It gives us an incredibly diverse background and an ability to draw on so many different experiences that we can help pretty much anybody from any industry. And again, as I said, the behavioral approach means that we're really taking it to what it means for the human in the workplace and not just treating them as widgets or just forcing a singular process into every situation.
Yeah, we like these three uniques. If those of you who are familiar with EOS, it's a cornerstone of the VTO and what makes an organization unique. And for us, it's we live it. We have the same pains that our clients have around people, profits, processes. We between all the different industries and jobs we've done, we've pretty much seen anything that the world can throw at us. And what really separates us is our behavioral approach to talent in the workplace. That's that makes us really different.
So we talked about the difference between development and acceleration, as we mentioned a little bit earlier. Leadership development primarily focuses on the leader themselves, and in some situations that's required. It focuses on them. It's typically in a seminar classroom format where somebody attends, though we know that adults, actually much beyond middle school, do not learn in a lecture environment. It's very structured. There's a fixed content, and sometimes it can be an MBA or something similar. Where leadership acceleration is really focused on growing the direct reports. So it's allowing the leader to actually build on some behavior expertise. We make it very sticky. We stretch it across anywhere from 4 months for our group program to 6 months for our personalized program. And it is very involved in making it sticky. There is some structured learning, there's practical application, and there's one-on-one coaching. And of course, it all starts with some self-discovery. It's critical to understand what are our current strengths so we don't lose those. Just because things come easy to us doesn't mean they come easy to everybody else. And then what are the opportunities for growth? But making it sticky as opposed to, you know, going to a seminar, coming back all fired up, 3 days later, you forget everything you learned.
Yeah, the point here, there's nothing wrong with leadership development. We've all been through leadership development, and we need leadership development. We need to grow ourselves, and we need to become better leaders through whatever resources are available. And in many cases, it could be as something as structured as an MBA. But another approach to leadership that we are finding being more effective or just as effective is figuring out what it takes to connect with those resources that the leader is leading and how to develop the skills and the mechanisms to focus on the growth of those direct reports. And that's what we're calling leadership acceleration. It complements leadership development in many cases, but it just shifts the focus a little bit, and the way in which some of the leadership practices that are introduced and taught are used to connect with the direct reports to accelerate their performance.
Yeah, and I think the stickiness is really important. I know as a recovering HR person, when I was in-house HR and I used to have to send people for leadership training, seeing them come back and being fired up, but not having anything get applied made me feel like I was lighting dollar bills on fire. I just didn't feel like it was sticky. And we know, if you're really going to learn something well, think about learning how to play golf. Nobody just signs up for a tournament, binge watches a bunch of videos and shows up to play. It doesn't work that way. You have to go hack around a little bit on a driving range, maybe playing a scramble, realize, oh, this is much harder than I thought. You practice, you get some feedback, maybe from a trainer or a coach, maybe your buddy who's videotaped you and is willing to show you just how horrible your form is. You go back in, you learn some, then you go back in and try to apply it. And you keep doing this iteratively. And that's actually how the learning takes place.
Yeah, and so the stickiness, somebody asked a little bit about that, is a function of having a process where you can experiment or try out a lot of your leadership practices real time with some receptive direct reports. Go back, make some changes, and then continue to do that with others. That iterative process of applying the leadership practices is one of the ways to make the learning sticky and something that you can use over and again.
Mm-hmm. So group versus personal, which one do you want to do, or do you need both? We've enjoyed a wonderful run with our group program, which does incorporate the one-on-one coaching, some workshops for learning the techniques. They're very interactive. There's lots of role plays, things like this. And then practical application time, more one-on-ones with coaches, and it's iterative like that with a couple of workshops and coaching opportunities therein. It has been wonderful, except that we needed a minimal cohort of at least 8 people, frequently more than that. And the challenge with that was twofold. One, when we had clients who didn't quite have 8 leaders or leaders that they could all take off the floor at the same time for one full day of a workshop. Or we have one client who's put through maybe 5 rounds of leaders, 6 months later, hired another leader, which means they have to wait until they get 7 more to have another workshop. So in any case, we realized there was a need for this personalized approach, but we were very nervous about how do we still make it sticky. We know that binge watching a bunch of leadership videos isn't going to make you a great leader. We know that just coaching once a month isn't going to make you a great leader. So how are we going to do this? We're very excited that we finally came up with something. It's a 6-month program. It does allow for what we call dispersed time commitments. So for some clients who find it difficult to take all of their leaders off the floor or out of the front lines for a full day, this way there are, for across the 6 months, each one has mini videos, anywhere from 2 to 4, that might be no longer than 8 minutes in length. You have a month to watch them. You also that month have some time for a one-on-one with your coach. And during that month, you're supposed to be applying what you're learning. And then you can do the next one. So it doesn't require that much out of pocket from the business as before.
And we'll get into the details a little bit on some examples here. But the point of this slide here is to explain that there are pros and cons to both types of approaches. Group training sessions are awesome for bringing leaders together to help them experience, share, to have some real life role playing that they can do amongst each other. The energy that you get bringing a group together is really valuable. And we love those organizations who bring their leaders together. The drawback is you got to bring all your leaders together. So that means there might be some time where there isn't a lot of leadership being done on the floor. On the other hand, personalized training gives the ability for organizations to be a little bit more flexible in how their leaders are developed. They kind of spread the time out a little bit. The other advantage of a personalized training session that if you have a group of leaders who have gone through a training session and have learned similar leadership practices, and then you bring a new leader into the organization, having a personalized training program that complements what the group had already been through is a great way to bring in new leaders into the same group leadership practices that were learned earlier. So there really isn't a better way. It's whatever the organization is best comfortable with as sending a group of leaders to a acceleration development session or individuals. So that's the beauty of a approach that we're going to show you where you can do both.
So how to decide who you should be training? We really want, ideally, the perfect leaders to put through either of these approaches is somebody who's really committed, somebody who really wants to improve in their leadership skills. So if you ask somebody why they want to become a leader or why they want to grow in their leadership, you should hear things like, I love it when I can bring a group of individuals together and they realize they can work better together as a team. Or I love helping people acknowledge what their personal growth opportunities were, even if they didn't see their own potential, as opposed to, I just figured it's the next logical step in my career, which is code for I need to make more money. And I think being a leader is the only way I can do it. The boss needs to be fully supportive and engaged. They have to have direct reports. This is not for somebody who might be a leader at some point a year or two down the road. It requires that you are putting these practices in place in real time and that the organization has a culture of growth. They're being challenged to grow and develop and grow in inquisitive leaders. But it is not for the person who is your last, this is their last chance. If you guys can't fix them, they're gone. That's not a good return on your investment. You clearly already know what the solution is. You're just looking for an excuse to blame it on a leadership program. So just bite the bullet, do the tough stuff, and make that decision happen.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, what we have seen work the best is when leaders have gone through development processes is to have the organization's commitment for their success, and having a boss who's helpful, having direct reports who are flexible in their boss's learning is very important as well. That typically comes with a culture of growth where with growth comes some practice, and with practice comes some challenge. And no leader going through a development or acceleration program is going to practice their techniques on their direct reports perfectly. And having some receptive direct reports and bosses is very important for leadership as they're going through the development journey.
One of the other things we learned recently from one of our clients who actually is on this call today is that measuring the commitment of the individual isn't always easy. So this particular organization had experienced several rounds of our leadership acceleration, and everybody was very excited. They were putting another round together. We had a couple of people who wanted to go through it again, and some new folks who heard great things. And I think they thought they could just show up and magically we were going to wave a magic wand and put all of this great leadership stuff in their head, but they weren't going to have to work at anything. And that wasn't the case. And I think they were surprised, and the organization was obviously disappointed. And one of the things that the decision maker decided moving forward that she might do, which I thought was brilliant, is that the next round might be asked, hey, we think you might be a great potential for the leadership acceleration process from the Metis group. We'd like you to get 3 recommendation letters from within the organization as to why you would be a good candidate for this program and are really going to give us some good ROI. And I thought that was wonderful for 2 reasons. One, we'll get some other buy-in from people in the organization. To John's point, getting support from others in the organization when you're not going to do things the first time perfectly. But secondly, you're trying to see if they're willing to put some work in, even on the front end, by running around and getting 3 letters. So I thought that was a brilliant idea, and making sure that the people you are investing in are prepared to give you that ROI.
Yeah, and one of the things that's important for leaders who are looking to develop their skills is this is extra. This is going to be a little bit of extra work for what they are currently doing. They're going to be doing things like one-on-ones. They're going to be doing goal setting, and they're going to be doing different types of feedback sessions. This typically is on top of some of the other leadership activities they're doing. In almost every single case, that leader, once they start to begin to apply those techniques, will have more time. But at the beginning, it ends up being a little bit extra time for leaders to have to budget for, and they have to have that commitment at the beginning.
For sure. So there are 8 essential leadership practices that we share with everyone. These have evolved over time, but they are proven. They work time and time again. We look at delegation, feedback, one-on-ones, development, job scorecards, performance evaluations, making sure goals are cascaded through the organization, and succession plans, not necessarily those big elaborate ones that the likes of General Electric are known for, but succession plans that if somebody is just knocked into the hospital for 6 weeks or something, or needs to take a long vacation, what do you do to make sure there's no business disruption? What can we do to make sure all of the key things keep going and that the organization can continue to function at its fullest? And we found that these 8 leadership practices are extraordinary in accelerating the performance of direct reports.
Yeah, there's nothing unique about these. Most leadership programs that a leader is going to embark on will include these. They're all basic managerial leadership applications, but understanding how to use them in a behavioral-based fashion is one of the approaches that we take. So delegation is different depending on the type of personality of a particular direct report. How feedback is given is a completely different approach depending on the direct report. What we try to teach our leaders is those who have had those parents who have had multiple children understand they need to connect with each one of their children separately or differently anyway. And the same is true with a leader in their direct reports. These 8 leadership approaches all should be customized based on the personality style of the leader and of the direct report, and then executed.
So when we look at the leadership acceleration approach, the essential piece is that it's very customized, that there is that practical application, that learning, that feedback loop, that it is really sticky, that there needs to be an expert coach with whom you can develop a relationship, feel that there's some good trust. So when you're trying things out that first time, you can say, all right, this was really clunky. I just did not like the way this feedback came off. I followed the 4-step model, but I don't think I was really taking my direct report's personality into consideration. Those things are important. We've been able to take the role plays that sometimes happen in the workshops and also make sure that they can happen between the direct report and the coach. So there's an opportunity to do that. But as John said earlier, one of the other keys is receptivity on the part of the direct reports. How receptive are they? And those who have heard me speak before know that I'm always talking about the fact that we judge ourselves by our intentions, we judge others by their behaviors. And many times as we coach people through this and we tell them you need to explain to your direct reports that my intention is not to make you crazy. My intention is to help make you wildly successful. So I'm going to try some different leadership techniques, but the first time I do things, I am not fantastic. So I need some feedback. I need some support from you guys. As soon as you tell your direct reports that, they cut you some slack, they're willing to give you feedback, they're willing to work with you on those things. And so you're working together on it as a team. You're not trying to do leadership in secret.
We had a question on what the 70-20-10 is. The 70-20-10 is a leadership approach, or a learning approach rather. And what it is broken into are 3 different parts of learning. The 10%, or the 10 stands for 10%, and 10% of the learning effort is in a structured learning environment. It could be a classroom, it could be a workshop, you're in a
Mini videos.
yeah, whatever you're doing to consume your content is in that 10%. The 20% of the learning effort is spent getting feedback on the learnings that you are applying. That feedback can come from a coach, that feedback can come from coworkers, it could come from the direct reports, but somewhere along the line, you're fine-tuning what you learned in that 10% as a part of that 20%. And that 70% of a learning process is the time spent actually doing it. So if you were learning leadership, that 70% of the time would be applying it to your direct reports. If you were embarking on a golf learning program, you would be spending 10% of your time getting instructional golf, 20% of your time getting feedback from those around you, and 70% of your time actually playing golf and learning. Same is true in any kind of leadership development. 70% of the time needs to be spent practicing on your direct reports, which is why that last point there is so important. In many cases, what we recommend leaders do is roll out some of these practices with just part of their team. Maybe pick one or two
superstars
direct reports that are maybe a little bit more tolerant of different types of leadership approaches. Experiment on them, fine tune your approach, and then roll it out to other direct reports. That's a part of the 70-20-10 approach, is learning what you're doing, getting feedback from those that you're practicing on, trying it some more, getting more feedback, trying it some more, and eventually being able to master it. So that we like to encourage that 70-20-10. And that again makes the learning sticky because it's something that you are applying 70% of your learning time, not just doing.
So, and to John's point, it is iterative. So it's not just 10% of your time that you're dedicating this week for learning. And so you learn for about 10% of the time, you apply it for about 70% of the time, you get feedback on what worked, what didn't work. Then you go back in and you learn some more, and you go back in and practice, and it's iterative. Mind you, this 100% is not 100% of your living and breathing time. It's 100% of the time you're dedicated to your learning and your leadership development. So that could be 4 hours a week. It could be 4 hours a month. Whatever time you're dedicating to it, we believe this learning model is the model that we've adopted. As there's several out there, some are really good, some are not. This one we found works very well in making it stick in the brain and in the practices, because over time, you don't even think about it. It doesn't take any more effort to remember how to do it because you're just in the mode for doing it this way. So this is the group leadership acceleration process. Everything in blue is a one-on-one with our director, with our senior advisor or coach. Anything that's in orange is a workshop, and the gray is the practical application period. So the self-discovery provides the participant with a full suite of assessments so they can learn about the strengths they already have and opportunities for growth. We also wind up beginning the action plan here that will be finalized shortly thereafter. But in this action plan, there is a measurable time-based goal. This is the same is true in both the personalized as well as the group, so that the organization can truly measure their return on investment. So let's say you want somebody says, I want to be great at delegation. Sounds wonderful. How will we know? Well, if they say by the end of third quarter, I want to have delegated 3 projects that are delivered on time and on budget without me micromanaging, that's measurable and time-based. They can also have measurable and time-based action steps below that. First thing I should do is figure out which projects I want to delegate. Then to whom do I want to delegate those projects? I want to introduce them to the empowerment model. And when the supervisor of this participant asks how they're coming along in their development plan, they should be able to see completion dates right next to each one of those activities to see that there's progress. Again, both in the group and the personal. After that, there's a full day workshop for the group when they learn all of those 8 leadership practices in a very interactive fashion. They have about a month to try it all out. Then they have another one-on-one with their coach to talk about what worked, what didn't work. What else can we learn? What are some additional resources they can learn from? There's a half-day workshop to focus on whatever is customized to this organization. There's usually a theme by this point that's running through of something that the group is struggling with. Then another month to apply it, and finally another one-on-one coaching session to make sure that they're wrapping it all up together.
Yeah, the point here is not necessarily for you to understand all the different steps. This is just an example of what a sticky, comprehensive process would look like. But one of the most important parts of any leadership process that we have found is that very first step on self-discovery. It's very important for leaders to understand who they are, what their leadership style is before they begin their leadership journey. Are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? There are different types of leadership approaches depending on who you are, what drives you, and understanding your leadership makeup is the very first step, should be the very first step in any leadership process any leader embarks on.
And then our personalized approach still starts with that self-discovery, and it still includes the development plan here. And then every month will be a combination of those mini videos I talked about, one-on-one coaching and practical application. But each month we'll have one or two of the leadership practices that are explained and embraced in order to be practiced that month. So at the end of the 6 months, we should have increasingly become more proficient in all of these.
And again, this is just an example of a longer process to help certain leadership techniques become sticky. Again, it gives an opportunity for the leader to do a 70-20-10, where each month they can be spending 10% of their time learning new techniques. 20% of that time then can be getting some feedback on what worked and what didn't work, and then 70% is actually making it happen. So whether you use a process like this or not, the key is to start with that self-discovery, take it in little pieces, and use a 70-20-10 approach to learning it.
So as the participants of this session,
we had a couple of questions
that
I think we want to get here.
Yep.
Well, we had somebody wanted a little bit more detail on the 70-20-10, and I think we kind of hit that on a couple of different slides. Somebody wanted to know on the 8 practices, which one is the best one, or is there any one you found to work better than others?
By far, there's one. You want to tell what's your favorite?
You want to go back to the list? The number one, what we have found, the number one leadership practice among these 8 is the one-on-ones. Teaching the leaders how to do effective one-on-ones does more to accelerate the performance of their direct reports than any of the other ones. Delegation might be, and feedback might be a very close second.
But if the one-on-ones aren't right.
But the one-on-ones aren't right. Remember that the focus of leadership acceleration is on the direct reports. One-on-ones makes all of the leadership on the direct about the direct report.
This is about the relationship between the leader and the direct report, these one-on-ones. These are not status update meetings. This is about the relationship between the leader and their direct report. And that's why if that's solid and open and candid and honest, then it just opens up the potential for all of the other leadership practices to work well.
We have one more question here. What types of assessments might you use for leaders in this type of application? So you want to talk a little bit about how we assess both leaders and direct reports. One of the few solutions that we have seen out there that has an assessment geared both towards leaders and direct reports.
So there are multiple answers to this question. So let me start with where we start on it. When we are kicking off leadership acceleration, group or personal, the participant receives 3 assessments and 1 test. They receive the DISC that helps us understand their behaviors. Remember, introvert or extrovert, analytic, creative. The second is their workplace motivators. What gives them gratification in their work? What inspires them to do the things that they do? Those things don't really change much, but it helps our coaches when they're coaching this participant to make sure that we're not inadvertently taking them from their comfort zone to their panic zone. It's okay to take them to their out of comfort zone, but we don't want them in the panic zone. And then the two that actually can be developed are the personal skills and their critical thinking. And so that's what they take. But we also, at the same time in the self-discovery, provide the DISC or behaviors assessment with the workplace motivators to every one of their direct reports. So when we start talking about feedback, one-on-ones, and development, we're bringing in for each leader, tailored to their specific direct reports, the communication style, the things that inspire them about their work, so that those things can be taken into account as they're leading their team through those things. So those are the primary ones we use in this. I will say that our graduate students often frequently will move on to a couple of different things depending on what's at play. We have an EQ 360 that is amazing to help people take their behavior expertise to the next level. And we also have a leadership 360 that can align to the strategic goals of the organization, especially if there is massive growth or massive changes coming up, and we can make sure that everybody's leadership efforts are going in the exact same direction. And we have a different leadership tool for that. There's a lot of really bad 360s out there, and we have hunted long and hard for the ones that cannot be gamed or weaponized. So depending on the situation, the last ones are usually really more for those who have already graduated from our leadership acceleration program.
But I think it depends also on the type of leader and how much leadership experience they have. One of the things that we are finding with these younger leaders that are early on, or maybe the first time leaders, what is important for them in their self-discovery is having an EQ assessment done so that they understand their emotional makeup and how their emotions are perceived by others. As we are beginning our careers, oftentimes we don't quite have an appreciation for our emotional makeup, and more importantly, how that is being interpreted by those people we are leading. Getting that first done by the leader so they know who they are and how they are being perceived is crucial to them being able to apply the leadership techniques that they learn in the program. If you have a clueless leader, loading them up with all kinds of leadership techniques is not going to work. You cannot take a hard driving leader and
It's oblivious to the wake of dead bodies.
right, and have them working with a introverted direct report and trying to have a very assertive leadership style. They need to understand that, and they need to understand the makeup of a direct report before they can be effective as a new leader. So the emotional intelligence is a very good self-discovery assessment for emerging leaders beginning on. Senior leaders tend to benefit a little bit more from a more comprehensive leadership 360. All leaders tend to benefit from understanding their behavioral style and their motivational makeup.
To John's point, the leadership, the EQ approach that's taken, we know that all emotional intelligence sciences talk about self-awareness, interaction with others, awareness of the interaction with others. The one we use also is looking at problem solving and how that's impacted decision making and how your emotions impact decision making, as well as stress tolerance. So if someone is completely oblivious as to how their self-awareness or how they're interacting with others, then that's a wonderful foundational gift to give them to help them understand this a little bit better before they embark on the leadership acceleration.
And then again, that's important in any kind of leadership training or development an organization is looking to bring in, is that customization or that personalized approach depending on what the leader's experience are, the makeup of their direct reports, the culture of the organization. All that will impact how a leadership is going to maximize the performance of their direct reports. So one of the things that we want to make available to those that are interested in leadership acceleration, we have a free tool that's available for download. You can go to our leadership acceleration page on our website, and there'll be a pop-up window. You can key in your information, and you'll get a document that will allow you to use our talent analyzer to understand your direct reports better. It's a phenomenal tool that helps leaders think about their direct reports as individuals. Oftentimes when we try to do leadership, we try to do a one-size-fits-all approach. And this leadership or this talent analyzer helps leaders understand how to kind of categorize their direct reports to tailor their leadership style accordingly. So that's a great tool to kick off your whole leadership journey with. There's an accompanying video that walks you through the worksheet to allow you to be able to implement it right away.
Please use the instructional video with the document. It'll make life a lot easier.
So that's available. Go head to our website and get that. Let us know what you think about it, and how you've been able to tailor that. Visit the website for more information.
Thanks, gang. Of course, there's our contact information if you need to reach either of us. We're looking forward to hearing from you more. And if any questions or thoughts pop into your head, don't hesitate to reach out.
Bye now.